Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. I've been doing Radio Dead Air for almost 25 years. But in addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, also works in the dark arts of IT. If you have tech questions for us, please send those along to request at radiodeadair.com, and we will attempt to, oh my good Lord, we have a bunch of questions tonight. I kind of expand. Oh, boy. So we've got a lot of news to talk about, and let's get the elephant in the room out of the way to begin with. We're going to have another Trump administration. And if you remember, if you have your brain from, back the last time, we had tariffs.
Yes,
and
we had tariffs because he doesn't understand how they work. He thinks the companies, yes, he thinks the countries that we're putting the tariffs on pay the tariffs. So if he puts a 50% tariff on China, that China has to pay 50% more to ship stuff here. Now, that's not how it works. The company that imports the thing pays the extra 50%, and they pass that on to the customer.
Yeah, it's like you kind of understand how the man bankrupted a casino, more or less. So we're not going to dig too deep into the politics of it because that's not our specialty. Not that I'm not concerned about it, but that's just not, my wheelhouse particularly.
And not the wheelhouse of the show.
But what we are going to dig into for this is strategies you might need to keep in mind before this goes into effect that you might need to take into account, concerns you might be having. These aren't going to go into effect immediately, obviously, because we haven't had a transition yet. Probably not till at least February.
I mean, he could say day one during his inauguration speech, the tariffs are in effect now. I don't think he will. There's probably going to be some companies that try to talk him out of, don't have it apply to this, don't have it apply to that, don't have it apply to other things, but we'll see.
But considering he runs things very capriciously, real companies who don't run things capriciously are already taking that into account and are trying to make plans to plan around this. They are stocking up. They're bringing in inventory to stock up now before they have to start, paying extra to bring it in. This is going to affect that. We haven't seen this. There's a tailwind before it actually gets into prices and store shelves and what's going to happen with it. But
theoretical tailwind, because what could happen and what has happened in the past with some companies is Trump says, or the government says, we're going to put a tariff on this item starting on the 15th. And some companies will immediately raise their prices, even though the inventory they have in stock is not affected by that tariff.
Right.
They're going, right. Well, that's going to be free money right there. We can blame the government.
Because that's how this all works. It has fuck all to do with us. We're in a terrible system.
Even better, some of those companies say that tariff then doesn't happen. He is capricious. Maybe he gets talked down. The tariff doesn't happen. Some of those companies then turn around and don't lower their prices.
No, they don't. That's how we've got a lot of the inflation we've had over the past few years. But so what can y'all do about this? What can be taken into account? Well, now before I say this, I understand we are all on limited incomes. We all have to live within our means. We don't have money flying out of our assholes. I understand this. Okay? Believe me. It's not like, suddenly, we're just gonna money shooting out of all my balls. It's just, that's not how things work. I understand that. I appreciate that. But we're dealing with unpleasant realities here. Hey, Daryl, thank you for 45 months resub. Appreciate you. We're dealing with unpleasant realities. That's what it comes down to. And it's not, I don't want to have to do this, and it's not, I can't afford to do this. It's, here's where we are. If you want to counter what's going to come, this is my advice. This is not saying you should bust out your finances and destroy your budgets and what. No, this is saying this is our best tips for trying to get ahead of this.
This is saying plan carefully.
The very first thing I can tell you is if you were planning to purchase any large durable good, not just electronics, but electronics is going to be the big one because we're looking at, they're saying 60%, which is insane. That means we're looking at if something costs
60% if it's from China.
Yeah. So if something costs, if for every $100 on a piece of hardware, we'll add another, say, $50 to that or $60 to that. So think about just something that costs $700 right now will end up costing $1,000. Prices are going to increase by a third, and it's so. What you need to do is if you have big purchases that you've been putting off, that you know you need, that you were going to be doing soon anyway, get them done before the end of this year. Ideally, especially for electronics and stuff, the best time to get these things is going to be during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that period. You are not, I promise you, you are not going to find the best deals on specific things, especially not this year. But you are going to find some deals, and some is going to be a lot better than none. Because understand, we're talking price increase by a third on whatever you're purchasing next year. So whatever you get now is effectively at a discount. I'm going to look at replacing the fridge. Recommendations.
By the way, another thing about this is it may end up being more than the listed tariff. And the reason for that, I'm going to use small numbers here so it's easy to follow.
Yeah.
So say you had something that was a company brings into the country at $10 a unit, and they had a 50% margin on that. So they sell it for 15. Okay. They get a 20% tariff on that. So that's now $12 a unit. Some companies are going to go, well, to keep that same $5 margin, we take it up to $17. Other companies are going to go, well, we need to have a $15 margin. We need to have our 50% margin on that. So that's going to take it to $18. So you're going to see some potentially math that you go, how does this make sense? This shouldn't have gone up this much. Yes, it will.
And the answer is, fuck you. That is essentially what, if you're like that, if any of this comes to you, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not good. Why would they do this? This is bad business. The answer is fuck you.
I mean, there's already one guy saying, oh, everyone should, this is not someone we endorse here. No. Everyone should keep their records because we're going to sue if you don't advertise on Twitter. I'm like, dude, you don't have a law degree.
No. So what's in terms of, I know some folks were, it's not a good idea to wait for the next generation of video cards. That was pretty much what our recommendation would have been, because we're very close to seeing the release of the RTX 5000 series. We're close to seeing the release of potentially AMD's Radeon RX 7000s, 8000s. We were very close to those. CES is probably going to be the release date, at least for, or at least the debut, if not the product availability for NVIDIA's stuff. Now, I cannot advise you to wait for, like, the mid-range cards were going to be here the middle of next year. So if you had a card and you're like, I need something faster, all right, we would have recommended you wait until next summer. And that's probably when you would have seen stuff like the 5060 and the mid-range, the $300 cards, the $300, the mid-range stuff. Now that's probably going to be very bad.
It's gonna be significantly more expensive because of these tariffs. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing to note is some people go, well, why can't these companies just move their operations to a country with lower tariffs or move them to the US? And for some things, you can do that. For a chip foundry, you can't just pick that up and move it.
And they're already in the process of trying to do that. Intel is building one here. TSMC is building chip foundries here in the United States. And they are years away from completion. They're already trying to move their production into the United States. They're already doing what these tariffs are supposed to accomplish. And yet it's going to, because you can't just snap your fingers and have these things spring up overnight. So again, the answer is fuck you.
Especially since TMSC is apparently having some problems hiring people. Maybe because they don't want to pay them. I don't know.
So graphics cards wise, what we can recommend trying to pick up, the 4060 is a good I wouldn't say a great deal, but it's for overall all-rounder with the access to stuff like RTX and DLSS. 4060 is pretty good for mid-rangey gaming stuff. For starting on a CPU, one of the techniques, and I know this is where your wallet's going to start going, how a good way to take into account if there's going to be a number of years where things are going to be bad is to overbuild now. Try to consider getting the highest tier you can possibly afford. If you were looking at getting a 4060, maybe think about a 4070. If you were looking at a 4070, maybe think about a 4080. Try to put as much as you can. If you were thinking maybe getting a Ryzen 7600, maybe try thinking about a 7700 or even a 7900. Overbuild, because it's not a guarantee, but a good way to increase the longevity of a computer system is to buy it a couple ranks above where it needs to be. Give me an example. The like RTX 30 series is still going very strong. Even the RTX 20 series, people have got the RTX 2080. That's slipped down to about where the RTX 4060 is now. So it's still a decent, graphics card. It's not top of the line anymore. Yeah. So overbuilding is a good bet. And I know you're looking at this, you're like, I can't afford it right now. I am never going to advise people to load up their credit card. That is not a good strategy. That should always be one of those that in case of emergency break glass.
Yeah, but I'm the same way. Admittedly, though, the credit cards I have, I use occasionally just to keep them active.
So that being said, you're going to have to figure out how crucial it is to have these systems available to you and what you're willing to put, how much debt you're willing to put yourself into to keep yourself out of being priced out entirely is the concern. Now, again, people are like, he's not going to do that. We are proceeding based on what the man and the administration has said. We are proceeding based on previous record of what he's done. If this does not turn out to be the case, the worst thing you will have done is spent some extra money to overbuild your system that's going to last longer than it should. That's, worse consequences can come out of all of this. Another thing I would recommend doing is, and this isn't just for your sake, this is for the sake of other people, other people who are not in as good a financial situation. Save your old tech. And I'm talking even if it's like a GTX 770, if we're talking like a laptop that's 10 years old, if we're talking a really old kind of dinged up 1080p monitor that doesn't even have an HDMI port.
Because if someone suddenly has a computer die on them, you can help them out.
Right. We're talking about, even if this stuff isn't like cutting edge, even if it seems older and junkier, it's one of those situations where if someone needs something to go and ready immediately, you need to have it, because otherwise their computer might die or your computer might die, and you'll be waiting weeks, months, long times to get your system back up and running. It's real nice if somebody can go, hey, here's something. It's not the greatest, but your computer will work. And that's one of those things that will come into, come very handy. It's something, we're in kind of, I say this weirdly enough, we are kind of in good shape right now with CPUs because AMD and Intel have stalled out in terms of processor speed. The only real big jump was the 9800X3D, which was a nice surprise. Some cases it's up to 10% to 15% faster than the 7800X3D. Nice to see. But everything else has just been kind of swirling around the same performance tier. And that's kind of good because that means everything's still, even stuff that are a few years old, isn't obsolete yet. Going back
if they pulled off a 40% increase, you'd be looking at this stuff, the older stuff, and going, I don't know if I can continue to use that. But because they didn't.
Yeah, and even if something new comes out in like next year or the year after that's considerably better, well, this stuff is still going strong for right now. So we're in good shape when it comes to CPUs. And if you buy one right now, if you buy a Ryzen 7000 series, 9000 series, it will be in good shape for several years to come going forward. So that's good. GPUs, that, at least for gaming purposes, you may have to decide how much you want to compromise on settings and whatnot, but we're not in a terrible space there. If you don't care about turning on stuff like RT and stuff like, just ray tracing, because the FSR is pretty much across the board, work for anybody. If you're not concerned about the super high fidelity, we're in pretty good shape with graphics cards. Radeon series has been pretty affordable as an alternative to, and I say not super affordable, as an alternative to RTX series. The Radeon RX cards have been a pretty good alternative. I'm not sure how this is going to work out for Intel. Intel is in the worst.
Is slammed lately.
Intel is in the worst possible situation for this to happen. Already, it was reported this week that AMD has overtaken Intel in the server market. That's huge.
On the stock market, didn't they get replaced in the NASDAQ?
They have been replaced by NVIDIA. Yeah. Intel came off the Dow and NVIDIA took their spot, which is rough. This is in addition to the fact that their newest CPUs, the Ultra 200 series, isn't moving. It's too expensive for what it does. The idea that they're going to have to tack on additional costs to sell things here, we were looking at like Battle Mage was going to be, it wasn't going to be the greatest things that sliced bread, but it was going to be a good entry-level option. If Intel has to jack up the price on it, it might not be all that attractive anymore, all things considered there. So Intel is in really bad shape. And I'm always concerned when either Intel or AMD are sitting on a precipice. I'm not expecting them to go bankrupt and disappear overnight. But considering the majority of computers in the world, not servers, but computers we use, workstations, blah, 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 that sort of stuff, the majority of those are x86 based CPUs. And the only two companies that are legally allowed to make x86 systems is Intel and AMD. Now, eventually, we are going to start slowly transitioning to ARM. NVIDIA is prepping for this. Qualcomm is prepping for this. Apple has already jumped on board for ARM completely. But that's a transition, and we're not there yet. We still rely on x86. So having one of the two companies responsible for really critical technology that we rely on in a precarious position, that's worrisome. And that's even without the tariffs. They're already sort of flopping around. The tariffs could be really bad. So another nice thing you can do is older laptops. If you are in a tough spot when it comes to money, or if you have some of these and someone else you know is in a tough spot, one of the easiest ways to keep old laptops viable and functional is to replace Windows with Linux. You will be amazed at the speed increases, not to mention the software updates, the security updates, all the things that were no longer available to those laptops. We're talking like 10 years old laptops. Once you replace Windows with Linux, is Lumi's back there? Let's palette cleanser. Let's see. Let's look in on. How you doing, Lumi? How you doing, sweetie? You having fun? She's having fun on the tree. She likes the tree. Y'all almost never get to see her because she's very reluctant. She's not a super duper cuddly kitty, but now she's here. You get to see her a little bit. There she is. What's going on? You having fun, sweetheart? There's a little dangly ball. Yeah, that's the best thing. She loves that. Loves a little dangly ball. Okay. There you go. Palette cleanser complete. Okay. And she flopped. Okay. So, what if you know dick about Linux? Doesn't matter. Linux has gotten super easy to install, almost as easy to install as Windows. All you need is a USB flash drive, a piece of free software called Rufus, R-U-F-U-S, and then decide on a Linux distribution. The two that I recommend the most for people who have little experience with Linux are Ubuntu or Mint. Those are very user-friendly. Yeah, they're easier to get into than most. They handle most of the things automatically. There may be some glitches right now, but mostly by and large, Linux, when it comes to Ubuntu and Mint is a bit more stripped down than Ubuntu. If you try to install it on something and it still seems like it's a little slow, Mint is a version that can be used. It's got less overhead and less. There's a version of it with less bells and whistles, so that's a good one to do. These are not going to be computers that are going to win marathons. They are not going to be able to do like super heavy compiling, or they won't play a bunch of super games. But what they will be able to do is some gaming. Steam has come a long way with helping Linux gaming. So there will be some games that are compatible on Linux. They will be able to do every single office task or general web browsing or any computing system. All of that will be available to you. So those will be available again. And you will even be able to do some stuff like video editing, Photoshop type stuff. Photoshop is not available on Linux, but there are alternatives. Those work on Linux just fine. So the point here is for people who can't afford it, for people who can't really afford to do upgrades right now, who have got older stuff, it's a nice stopgap. And either for you or stuff you can loan to someone else or donate to someone else who might need something to keep going. It's going to be a lot of recommending of reuse and repair as much of your stuff as possible. This goes for phones too, though phones are trickier because older phones, a lot of them are still...
There's no upgrade path on phones, really.
Yeah. A lot of the older phones are still viable. They'll still connect to a network. They'll still dial out. But then there's the issue. Security patches are not as few and far between as they used to be, but mainly the sticking point for phones are batteries. The good news there...
The older phone, once the battery starts to go, you may not be able to find a replacement because no one's making it anymore.
True. But if you can find a generic battery, you may be able to, for relatively inexpensively, have a repair shop install that for you. They'll still have to pay their labor costs, but as opposed to
cheaper than an entire phone. Right.
So keeping those alive, it's trickier and you will require help unless you're very good at doing the stuff yourself. It's generally hold on to old phones, not just for yourself, but one of the things you have to consider other people. It's going to be, we're going to be in a little bit of a roller coaster. I say a little bit. It's going to be a roller coaster. We don't know who's going to get hit and how. It's going to be kind of a mess. So one of the ways we're going to get through this is to consider other people and their needs, and, you know, a lot of mutual assistance is what's going to need to go on. Generally, like I said, we are the best thing I can say is that the CPU stuff, we're generally fairly lucky in a weird way that performance is stagnated. If things were still leapfrogging, it would be like, wow, because then you'd have Windows catering to the leapfrogging and games catering to it. But that's not happening. We're kind of in what I would say is a stable point. But anything else, and especially one of the reasons my show is going to be here. So if you need to find ways to fix your stuff, to keep your stuff going, to questions about stuff,
we'll do what we can to help.
Yeah, that's why we're here. And that having been said, it's time to start getting to your questions for this week. We got a lot. We got some. Oh my goodness, we had like
more than what you've already sent me.
Yeah, 3 more have come in. So a lot of people are concerned this week. Let's start with Salty Sea Witch. I've been looking into getting a new gaming laptop. Don't have room for a standard PC setup, so it'd have to be a laptop. Don't know a lot about computer specs, but I do know on my current budget, it's the graphics card that's causing problems due to being an older computer. General budget I'm looking like up at is maybe $3,000. Okay, well, you're in good shape there, because, yeah. Some things to consider about purchasing, especially gaming laptops as opposed to desktop systems. First of all, they lie, because you're going to see systems, gaming laptops that say, oh, it's got an RTX 4080 in it. It's not an RTX 4080.
It's a cut down version of the 4080, if it's even really a 4080.
Sometimes it's like, yeah.
All right. It could be, 4060, that they've just named a 4080 and called it the laptop model.
How it works with laptop versus desktop graphics cards. It used to be they would add a suffix to it like M to designate that it was mobile. At least a little bit of fig. Like it was like the 1080M versus the 1080. The 1080 desktop graphics cards are always going to be faster and more powerful because they can use as much electricity as they want and they have more room for cooling. Laptop graphics cards, they have to make compromises. If they were being honest about those compromises, they would tell you, well, this one performs on laptop about as well as this one on desktop, and that would be honest. But what they do is they say, we're just going to call this one the super fast one, even though it's nowhere near as fast as the real one on desktop. So that's something to take into consideration.
Now, other things to take into consideration, of course, are brand name.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally speaking, you're not putting together a laptop like the way you would a desktop. There are brand names to avoid. Some of them because they've got a shaky reputation. Some of them because they charge an extreme premium for the name.
Alienware should be avoided at all costs.
Yes, Alienware is avoided for that reason, the second reason, name, and sometimes because some of their equipment is just not as good.
Yeah. Right now, MSI is pretty decent, as far as I know. People are saying good things about Lenovo again, and for the longest time we were like, Lenovo, but people are saying good things about Lenovo in terms of laptops again. At least the main thing I hear about Lenovo is they're easier to repair, which is something you want to consider going forward, is how easy it is to fix your shit. So having a system that can be easy to repair is something to keep in mind. Reputation of customer support is another thing you want to look into. Because spending $3,000, you're going to have some kind of warranty on this thing. And at least 3 years I would look into getting. And in that, so yeah, Alienware used to be good. Oh yeah, Alienware wasn't always Dell. Alienware was its own company back in the 2000s. And then Dell, wasn't it like late 2000s that Dell purchased Alienware?
That sounds about right.
And once that happened, they effectively became Dell computers with an Alienware logo on it more or less.
Now, another thing to avoid is Republic of Gamers. Not because it's a bad stamp, but because you're paying quite a bit extra just for it to say ROG on there.
Other things to keep in mind, if you're buying a laptop, that means you're stuck with whatever monitor's built into it. Get one that has the highest refresh rate possible. Refresh rate is one of those things you can't change later, and that has an impact on overall frame rate. If you're concerned about gaming, you're concerned about frame rate. So nothing lower than 120 hertz. No screen lower than 120 hertz. You should be looking towards 144, maybe even 200, above 200 hertz for your refresh rate on laptop. Also consider they're going to be heavier, they're going to be louder, they're going to be hotter because gaming laptops are trying to squeeze out performance even though it's in a laptop form factor. And your battery life is going to be terrible no matter what happens, because in order to get that gaming performance, it's going to eat power. Yeah, that's another one. Daryl's pointing out number of ports on the laptop. Check on those. Make sure you have as many USB ports as possible because those will come in freaking handy.
Now, in this area where you're looking up specs, a site to do this on that's great. It usually has all the specs is Newegg. Even if you end up not buying from them, their spec sheet that they put up for the equipment is pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. In terms of between in terms of between Intel and AMD, I tend to lean more toward AMD for CPUs, even on laptops. Although you can get AMD laptops with NVIDIA graphics cards. And if you're concerned about some of those bells and whistles, but keep in mind, Radeon's not bad either. Whatever you get, if it's a gaming laptop, it's going to have a dedicated graphics card. Just keep an eye on the specs on that. I think that's about all we can. Yeah, that's about all. Pretty much everything to add on that one, or else we going around all night on that. So, don't know a lot about computer specs. So let me see what's in the three. I just throw out what you can expect to get for $3,000 right now. Let me bring up Newegg. Because you just want an idea of what you can get.
Well, right under 3,000, and I say right under, it's at $29.99. Is the MSI Stealth 16. Now it says AI Studio, but that's probably just branding at this point.
Fucking AI at this point, yeah.
It's 120 hertz refresh rate. It's got an Intel Core Ultra 9 Series 1.
Let me see here.
And remember what we said about graphics cards? It's got a 4080.
Yeah. Which will probably perform like about 4060 Ti, 40, something like that. There's Lenovo Pro 7i Gen 9 laptop. That's got an i9 14900, 4080, 4 terabyte SSD. Pretty good shape for those sort of things. Let's see what MSI has. I'm going to switch to just make sure, look for AMD processors. Let's not have Intel on this list. The latest AMD mobile processors are called AMD AI, but just understand a lot of that's just marketing, branding crap. Let's see. Yeah, Ryzen 9. Bunch of Ryzen 9s on here, so that's good. Let's see, and graphics. Let's see, just integrate graphics. What do you got? RTX 40 series. What do you got here for these prices? Yeah, 4070 to 4080 is about the price range there. So,
now one thing to note: a number of laptops are still using PCIe for their storage, not M.2. So that's another thing to note. Keep in mind.
Yeah, but at the $3,000 level, if they're not using M.2, it's very weird.
It is.
But whatever the CPU you're going to look for, if you're going to get one with AMD, make sure it's a Ryzen 9. If you're going to go for Intel, make sure it's an Intel i9 or Ultra, Ultra 9, because they've changed it. But 9 is for CPU. 9 is the number you want to consider. GPU stuff, the 4080 or 4070, depending on what you want to get. At least 32 gigs of RAM, 64 if possible. At least 2 terabytes of SSD, 4 terabyte space if possible. And no display at least 120 hertz, no lower than that for the graphics display. All right. Next question. Let's break on through the other side. What do we got? All right. Hello, Nash, Mike, and Assorted Fluffs. I have a work-provided Lenovo ThinkPad T15 with an i5 1250p processor. 1250, what? 1250? That's what? Huh? What is 1250? I've never heard of that.
I'm looking up the tech specs on it now. Processor, 10th generation, i7. They're calling it that.
I see an 11th gen, 1135. Yeah, okay. Okay. The question is, how do I find out what the 2 USB C ports on this thing can do? That depends.
Okay, that's a weird question. The first thing I would say is we'll check the manual. Okay, so USB-C is a high bandwidth USB port, but it's also can be a high power port, not automatically a high power port.
All right. The thing about USB, let's break this down for folks. USB has a lot of different standards. USB 1 all the way to USB 4 currently. Let's talk about what USB ports can do. Guaranteed, every USB port on a system right now will do 2 things. It will deliver a small amount of power. So if you plug in a phone or any device into it, it deliver at least 5 volts at a varying level of amperage, but at least 5 volts. And it will transfer data. Those are 2 for sure things they will do if it's a USB port on a computer, unless it's a very stupid port that only does power, which would be uber cheap. Usually they do 2 things, power and data. How much data and how much power depends on which level of USB it is, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The higher the number of USB version, the more data it'll transfer.
Now, what I've seen looking up this specific one is that there's 2 of them side to side. The rear one has a power symbol on it, and the spec says that's the power input, and the front one is a USB-C Thunderbolt 3. So that should be a very high-speed data port, but it won't charge the computer. The rear one will charge the computer, but may not do data very well.
Another thing, even though it says ThinkPad T15, there are different versions of the T15. So one other thing that USB-C options can be is DisplayPort over USB, which essentially is you can plug a monitor into it. Not only will it power the monitor, it will display the video across the USB connection. However, not every USB port can do that. It has to specifically have the ability listed on that given port to transfer DisplayPort over it. I see here you have one, looking at the first gen T15, it lists one USB-C / Thunderbolt 3 DisplayPort. There's also another one that says USB-C DisplayPort. So it will do video over USB-C. And I believe those daisy chain as well, which is also helpful. So yeah, that's what you could expect out of this. Those can do. If it's USB 3,
there should be little symbols next to the USB's ports as well. So look for those. If it's got the little Thunderbolt, lightning bolt, that is a Thunderbolt port. If it's got a little power plug, that's power.
If it has USB-C 3, I think you're looking at upper limit of 20 gigabit per second if you're lucky. 10 to 20 gigabit per second data. Is 20 USB 4? I want to say 20 is USB 4. Well, no, 40 is USB 4. It's hard to keep up. I think you're limited to data transfer speed of 20 gigabit per second. Not terrible, but and that's about that's about everything you can get out of that one. But yeah, the symbols on top of it will tell you which ports do what. And if you grab the manual, it'll tell you that too.
That's assuming the symbols haven't been rubbed off. They're usually put on with it's not like a transfer, but it is. It can wear off.
Yeah, just grab the manual and it will tell you which port. If you don't have the symbols on there, the manual will tell you which port's which. I'll charge you. Okay, Nash and Mike, hoping to put this off for a little longer, but I need to bite the bullet and do it now before prices skyrocket. I'm looking to upgrade from a laptop to a desktop system. Presumably, I'm looking for something mid-range, currently a vlogger, need something to reasonably edit, process videos. Something with a disk drive would be preferred. Now, if we're talking a pre-built system, that's likely not going to happen. I don't know anybody who is still making pre-builts with a, hey, bud. A 5.25 inch. Yeah.
That said, an external USB CD drive is extremely inexpensive. And
20, $30, you can get one that functions. That's probably going to be your best option is a USB-C or USB 3. Just an extra. Hi. That's the microphone, buddy. Hi, you're not helping. A USB powered external DVD drive or Blu-ray is going to be more expensive, but that's going to be your best option on that. You're not going to find it built in. The HDMI port, if it even exists. Yeah, HDMI still exists just fine. All right. What we've been recommending is, well, it's based on recommendations from Gamers Nexus. They did comprehensive look at pre-built systems, and one that kept coming up repeatedly for being reliable customer service, well-built systems, and affordable is Newegg's house brand, which is called ABS. And let's see, your price range was no higher than $1,100, 600 to 1,000. Thank you, Charlie, for climbing behind the damn monitor. So let me see what we have for that from ABS. Let's see. And also, again, keep in mind, Black Friday's coming, and they will be moving some slightly older merchandise, which will still be perfectly viable.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Newegg has currently turned on, for certain things, their Black Friday price protection. Yeah. So what that means is, if you buy it now, and on Black Friday it's $70 cheaper, they'll give you the $70.
Let's see. Desktop systems, what do we have here? For about the $1,000 mark. They've got some. Let's see. Do we have stuff that's not refurbished or?
I saw. I mean, technically, I'm looking at gaming desktops right now, but that's going to cover a lot of the stuff you need to do.
Right. Let's see. Price wise, I'm seeing a bunch of refurbished going. Okay, there we go. At about the $900 level, RTX 4060 with an Intel i5 1440F, which means it's a 1440. It doesn't have a graphics built into it that you don't need it. That's about 900. Let's see. Is there anything AMD side of it? AMD 5000 and 7000. What we've got there. There's you find one Ryzen 5 7600 with an RTX 4060. It's the ABS Ruby Cyclone, and it's actually on sale for a little, about $270 off. It's not bad. Let's see, bring this up on screen so you can see it. This is not going to be like a super duper heavy duty system, but it will do everything you need it to. It'll game reliably. Pretty good for doing video stuff as well. 32 gigs of RAM already included. 1 terabyte M.2 drive. So ignore that AI power. Again, the AI, all the AI shit is just marketing. It doesn't mean crap. It comes with Windows pre-installed. You have a warranty with it, and they will. It's got some upgradability because it's the Ryzen 5 system. So yeah, that's if pre-built is what you're able to do, that's a pretty good deal. Keep in mind,
motherboard there has a second M.2 slot. So if 1 terabyte of storage is not enough, you have a second M.2 plus a number of SATA connectors.
Yeah. So yeah, this is not going to be the biggest and baddest system, but it will cover everything you need it to do. All right. Let's see. Who was that? That was Marcus. Yeah. So good luck, Marcus, there. All right. Let's see. What's next? Erica.
Now we're into the ones I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Looking to buy a PC for obvious reasons. Looking for pre-built ones. I know my limit. Making my own. Your budget's around $2,000. Again, same recommendation. You're looking at Micro Center is another option. You're looking at if you have one nearby, it's a good option. Because the support you get for Micro Center is really good. You have knowledgeable people in store, and they also have a lot of open box items that are really worth it. Let's see what you're looking at here. You're looking at Micro Center, budgeting around $2,000. And power spec is their in-house system. Let's see. There. Not a whole lot on the list. Yeah. Yeah. Power spec. Yeah. This one right here that is on your list, your Micro Center list. Let me look at the specs on it. 7800X3D. That's nice. For RTX 4070 Super, 2 terabytes. For $1,799 with $100 off. That's a hell. Yeah. That's all right. Yeah. It will last you a long time, and the part of how it will do that is you're on the Ryzen AM5 platform. In a couple years, you'll be able to upgrade that CPU fairly simply and still get a good boost out of the system and keep it viable for a long time. Pre-built systems, a lot of the time you have to keep two things in consideration: the support you're going to get from whoever does it, and apparently Newegg's ABS is good. Micro Center is definitely good. Micro Center is the anti-Best Buy. They actually have knowledgeable people and they sell good shit, and having one nearby is amazing. The other thing you want to look at is the parts they're using. ABS and power spec from Micro Center is they're using off-the-shelf parts. Why that matters is those tend to be better than the ones that are custom made for like Asus and HP and any of those the pre-made companies, because their cases, for one thing, tend to be crap. They are bad for airflow. They also the cards and the components they get for them are quite often they get special limited runs of motherboards and graphics cards and other parts that are not quite as good as the ones you'd buy off the shelf. And in a lot of cases, they especially with, speaking of cases, their proprietary cases, once the motherboard goes, you can't replace it. So having a off-the-shelf computer case means that if for some reason down the line the motherboard blows out in this thing, you will be able to grab one off the rack and throw it in. Any of them. As long as it follows the ATX specification, bang, bang, back up and running. Fans, bang, bang, back up and running. Power supply. Pre-builts from a lot of these companies like to make proprietary power supplies, which are a nightmare because
it won't just be a proprietary power supply. It'll be a proprietary enclosure that it fits into in the case. So you can't just go, oh, well, I'll just take it out and replace it with a standard. No, it won't fit.
And there are the plugs on the motherboard itself won't match either. They won't be a standard 24 pin that everything else uses. They suck. Do not. That's why we recommend company, even stuff like iBuyPower and CyberPower, which are not as great. They're still using off-the-shelf, universally compatible parts. For longevity and repairs, they're a better option. So yeah, this one is a pretty good for the price range you were talking about. This is a good one. The 7800X3D, it's more gaming focused, but it still does the general stuff pretty well too. So it's not just a matter of avoid the big names. It's the way they design they keep their costs down by using customized limited run parts. And then when something goes bad, you either have to go to them to fix it for a remarkable price, or you just buy a new one from them, and they make you waste your money, and they're terrible. So ABS or Micro Center in-house, better bets. All right, this is from Jeff Teeple. Looking at getting maybe a VPN to share amongst my family and about 4 computers. Question is, what kind of things should I look for? What sort of prices are reasonable? What are some red flags for bad VPNs? And where can I find good comparisons of various VPN companies? Jeff, if you don't mind, I want to come back around to this one for next week, because I want to do some. This one just came in like about an hour ago. I want to do some research on this.
This is a research question.
I want to do some research on this. I want to see, it does change these days between different companies. Off the cuff, I will say I use ExpressVPN, and they cost me, how much is ExpressVPN annual? I think it's about $100 annually for the whole year. Double check.
I will say they are CNET's top choice.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. How much is annual? Where's my annual price here? It's something like $10 a month. So it's like about $100, $8 a month. It's about $100 a year. However, that being said, ExpressVPN is not super high on the will protect you from the government kind of list. And that's something we want to look into more on that. Overall, I've had a good experience with ExpressVPN. That's just there. I'm not sponsored or anything. I pay out of pocket for it. We will get into some of the red flags for bad VPNs are any of them that have had security breaches, because obviously NordVPN, their reputation got a big hit because they have some bad security breaches. Yep. Reasonable price is $10 or under a month. And things you should be looking for, device compatibility is a nice one as well. As far as security stuff goes and speed, the more computers available to remote into, the more they have around the world, the faster your speeds you're going to get. You're always going to take a hit on your internet speed when you're using a VPN, because you're connecting to the internet through a second computer. You go to that computer goes to the rest of the internet, and as an intermediary, it's going to affect your overall speeds. So having more systems and a bigger network means they have more to connect to, and speeds won't be as affected as much, but they will still be affected somewhat. Otherwise, let us get back to you with some more information about this next week, Jeff, and we'll give you a bit better answer on that one. Last one is from Colin. Mentioned now's best time to get electronics. Well, technically we're saying Cyber Monday, Black Friday. So like 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks? Shit, how close is Thanksgiving?
It's 3 weeks. But let me say,
okay.
So I already mentioned it, the Newegg price protection is basically if you buy between now and the 20th, and between then and the 20th and the 30th, the price goes down. That's what they'll pay you back for. Or something very close to that. And it's automatic. But that's the kind of thing you need to look into, so you don't go, I should have gotten $25 back. And you missed the cutoff by a day or something.
All right. So I think current computer is about maxed out from what my motherboard supports, but it's the thing I can do now to upgrade. I probably want to get it done now. And he's got a part list here. Let me share this with you over here on the Discord. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. Weird night. Folks.
Nobody does.
Nobody does. Yeah. Let's see what we got here on your list. You look like you're on an AM4 system. Obviously, let's bring that up. Ryzen 9 5900X. Okay. Your air cool.
Okay, so what are they asking? Ask here. What should they upgrade?
What should they think about upgrading?
Motherboard
honestly,
processor.
Yeah, motherboard processor for longevity's sake. Even if you were to get something like a 7700X, that would put you speed-wise above what you have right now. 7600X will actually be a little slower. So I wouldn't go an AM5 motherboard. You don't need to buy anything more than a B650. Do not buy the B850s or any of that. Just B650 is going to be cheaper. Does everything anyway. And to avoid downgrading from what you already have, at least a 7700X, if not faster. And what's a 7700X going on now?
They'll need to swap out memory too, won't they?
DDR5. Yeah, you go DDR5 6000 is what you're going to look for. A 7700X is going for is that all? Really? Let me see. Really? Only $270 right now. Okay, that's a good deal. All right. So yeah, Ryzen 7 7700X is a good one to look to. I would maybe, unless you specifically are wedded to having a water cooler, I would maybe consider moving to an air cooler, simply because liquid coolers do not pre-built closed liquid coolers like this don't last indefinitely. They will eventually wear down and stop working. Air coolers, as long as the fan works, it works. It's just a hunk of metal. It can't go bad. So you might want to look into getting a large, heavy-duty air cooler to go with whatever you upgrade to. That said, you can still keep the old one. In fact, if you're using it with an AM4 motherboard, it'll work with an AM5 motherboard. No trouble. Your storage devices still looks good. You've got two 1 terabyte M.2 drives, PCIe 4. That's pretty good for right now. Actually,
do make sure that the motherboard that you buy supports the proper number of M.2. It is easy to buy one that says, you say, oh, this will do. Oh, I'm one shy, M.2.
Yeah. Your case still looks good. Your power supply still looks good. The graphics card, that 3060 Ti, it's not a bad card. But if you are looking to upgrade something, you might want to consider that. For about, let's see, go from a 3060, I wouldn't want to go backwards on it. I mean, 4060 is a little bit of an upgrade over it. Maybe a 4070, something to look into.
Yeah.
Or
the equivalent AMD card.
Yeah, what would that be? RX 7000 series. What do they got right now? What would be close to that? 7700. Let's see. 7700 XT. And it's about half again as fast. Still have access to FSR, no DLSS. Let's see, price wise on these, 7700 XT is it's at 350. So that's a good deal. Yeah, well, 370 technically. That's a pretty good deal versus a 4060 or a 4070, which would be a more delineated upgrade for you. That's at 550. Yeah. So yeah, or 500 if you're getting like a super good deal on it. So yeah, I mean, if you're not really super concerned about ray tracing, the 7700 XT is a good deal. Maybe even a 7800 XT. Let's see what's that at right now, price wise. That's at 470. So that's another $100 up. If you are concerned about ray tracing, maybe look into a 4070. Otherwise, let me say, what you have right now is still comparatively a pretty good system. The 5900X, if you're concerned about longevity of the overall system, the 5900X will last you a while longer yet. It's about as good as a 7700X, which is the next generation. So it's still a pretty good, solid CPU. If it's absolutely what you need to upgrade right now, graphics card wins hands down. That's what you should be concerned about. If you're worried about long-term upgrading, AM5, get an RX 7, get a Ryzen 7 7700. But otherwise, if you are strapped for the cache stuff, that CPU, the AM4 socket CPU, that 5900X, that's a good one. It's still a solid CPU. Not top of the line anymore, not top of the charts, but as far as a solid functioning CPU that's still viable and far from obsolete, yeah, it's a good one. All right, let's see. Do we have any more tonight? I think that's everything. All right, that's it for tonight. A lot of questions. I know we're worried too, folks. I appreciate you. We'll do our best to help. That's what we're here for. Jeff, take what information I already gave you, and we will look. Raritor, you left a question. All right, let me see if I can answer that one real quick. I need to check these more regularly too. Let's see. Comments. Raritor got one for us. All right. Here it is. All right, you mentioned how the X870 chipset is not too different from the X670. So much so they're probably not worth it for most users. Since we're approaching dates when buying parts for building a computer are likely to happen, could you do a refresher on a small explanation for each tier of chipset and what sort of use case one should consider for each one? Okay. All right. Right now for AM5, there are two different motherboard chipsets. The first generation that came out is the 600 series. The new one that just came out is the 800 series. Functionally, they both work with the exact same CPUs. It's just the 600 series will need a BIOS update to work with the Ryzen 9000. Otherwise, they work the exact same types. At the very top, you have X670E and X870E. These are abso-freaking-lutely identical with one exception. The X670E motherboards can have USB 4 support. The X870 motherboards will have USB 4. That's the only difference between them. Whatever features on different models, as far as the chipsets themselves go, that is it. They are functionally identical. Therefore, in my opinion, it's not worth it to purchase an X870E. If the price is a consideration, X670E will do the job. One tier down, you have X870. Oh, actually, I take that back. One tier down, you have X670. There is no version of that over on X870 because they just don't. X670.
It's all X870E.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah. X670 has where's the matrix I can look up? AM5
and this is where I confess that the computer I'm looking at building here in the next month or so, maybe even sooner. I am looking at an X670E motherboard just because I can.
Yeah, X670E, I will point out, is the top of the top, and it is fairly overbuilt. For most users, you will not need X670E or X870E. They are completely overbuilt. They're just way past what anything would need. The difference between X670 and X670 is PCIe 5.0. That's the main sticking point between the two.
And that could be a real sticking point for you. That could be something you go, no, I got to have that one.
So the graphics card on X670 is going to PCIe 4.0, but it will have at least one 5.0 slot for a hard drive. That's with X670. X670 is just sort of kind of like, all right. Next tier down is X870 and B650E. Now, if that doesn't make any sense, that's on purpose. These are also identical. They are literally the same chipset. It's just they named one X870 to get you more willing to buy it. They're no different. B650E, X870, the same. Identical. The only difference again is USB 4. That's it. They're identical. It's just X870 has USB 4, B650E doesn't. B650E also has a PCIe 5.0 graphics card slot. B650, no PCIe 5.0 graphics card slot, and it can have a 5.0 slot for an M.2 drive, but it's optional. My recommendation is at most do not buy anything bigger than B650E. Once you go down, B650 is still very, there's also PCIe lanes you have to consider in there, but that's only for power users. If you have a ton of external stuff and M.2 drives and whatnot, then X870E might make sense for you. But most users will be fine with B650 to B650E. Those are the $200 to $300 range of motherboards, maybe a little bit cheaper if you can look down at the like maybe 170, 150, depending on ASRock recommended if you're trying to on a budget. ASRock's making really good stuff motherboard wise right now. If you're on a budget, they're going to have some of the cheaper, better options that are stronger for upgrading later. You'll be able to put. ASRock has been making really good VRMs, the voltage regulation sections of their motherboard. Those are important if you want to put in more powerful CPUs later, because that means the motherboard will be able to handle those more effectively. Do not get B640 or B840 or A620. These are also identical. And the B840 naming is terrible because the B series has usually been mainstream. X series has been the power user, extreme users. Extreme. And the A series has been, this is like an office workstation system. No real overclocking, no bells and whistles. It just works. But for the 800 series, AMD in their infinite wisdom decided they were going to try to trick users into buying an A series motherboard by calling it a B series. It's a trick. It's dirty. It sucks. A620 and B840, in fact, they are identical. They have made no real changes. But they added, 2 PCIe lanes. That's it. That's the big change they made. They haven't added, that's it. That's the whole bit they added. Avoid at all costs. It's not worth it, especially for most people. Price-wise, the B650 to B650E will last you longer. Unless you're trying to build a super-duper cheap, junky one, you might even find a good deal on a B650. B840 is to be avoided at all costs. Don't touch that. I think that's everything. Yes, that's the whole question. So, all right. That's going to be it. Oh, wait, we have one more. Acer Nitro 5 on clearance for 600 Canadian about a week ago. I'll have to look that one up. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Have to remember that for next week. We had a lot this week. We had a lot of people worried. We had a lot to talk about. I understand. It's rough. We will be back next week, though. Next Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for me and Mike, send those to request@radio.air.com. We will help. If you have questions concerning budgets and buying and stuff, we'll look into those as much as we can. That's what we're here for. Send those on along. You can also leave questions in the comments of the YouTube as well. I will get around to looking at those. Folks, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.